Namaste, everybody, and a warm global welcome to you all, wherever you are tuning in to today's broadcast from. Uh, Welcome to this live stream broadcast from the Hindu Academy team. We are so excited to have you join us today as we delve into the topic of what is true love. This is an important topic that affects us all in some way, and we are honored to have the opportunity to explore it with you. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you who take the time uh, to join us today. We all have busy lives, and so we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us. We have viewers from all around the world, and we are grateful for your support and your interest in Hinduism and spirituality. So whether you're watching us from the comfort of your home or you're at a location far away, we are so glad to have you as part of our community. We would also like to remind you that you can actively participate in this live broadcast by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel on YouTube or following our page on Facebook. We are on both platforms on Hindu Academy. So by doing so, you can help us reach even more people and spread the message of Hinduism and spirituality across the world. And finally, we'd like to invite you to join into today's conversation by sharing your thoughts, comments, and questions with us. And whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can share your comments in the chat area or the comments area. And we would love to hear from you, to engage with you in a meaningful discussion around the topic of what is true love. So don't be shy. Let us know where you're watching us from today. And remember to share your thoughts and questions with us. We are eager to hear about them from you. So now, I'm going to share a focus topic video. And then after that, we're going to get into the rest of the discussion for today. So enjoy this video and we'll see you back very shortly. What is true love?
Yes, you see, this is it's nice way to start the session today. Because people always, you hear the word, oh, love is important, and love, everybody talk, all the gurus speak about love, and it's wonderful. And of course, youngsters talk about love, but in a different way. But let's talk about love in general. First of all, you may think this is a straightforward thing, you all understand, but in reality, when you try and understand what is meant by the word love, you realize how difficult it is. I'll just give you an example. Suppose I ask a very young child, a 4 or 5-year-old young boy, saying, well, what is love? Because he always says, I love my mom. I say, what is love? What is exactly love? He say, it's something that makes you feel nice and warm. See, this is how he defines love. Makes you nice and warm. Okay. I say, look, in winter in London, suppose I plonk you in front of a radiator in the winter morning and you start to feeling nice and warm. Are you in love with the radiator? And he'll jump and say, no, I didn't mean that. See, I'm trying to encapsulate what is meant by the word love. And it's not that straightforward. So a young child will just try and understand it as something that makes him nice and warm and love, kind of comfortable. Now suppose I ask a teenager, what is love? Of course he'll start fidgeting, looking away from me. He knows well. I say, I know exactly what you mean, my boy. I understand exactly what you mean. If that girl that you met at a party responds to your text message, surely that is love. Isn't that what you mean? You say, yes, you got it. Yes, uncle, you understood what is the meaning of love. I say, my boy, actually, this is, whether you like it or not, there will be something called love there, but it's really your hormones, the pesky little hormones playing up. This is your, physical attraction, and you're equating it to love. He said, no, it's more, something more. So what is more to this idea of love? People talk about love left, right, and center. What the heck is it? Then suppose you ask a mature, grown-up person, kind of very clever and intelligent, and say, define love for me. What is love? He said, love means looking after each other, taking care of others, taking care of each other. That is what love is. It sounds so, nice and kind of mature. Love is looking after your wife and your children. So caring for others is what is meant by love. I say, oh, interesting. Suppose you go to that posh restaurant around the corner, sit down, and before the waiter starts serving you food, you offer him a £50 tip. in advance. You know what will happen? That waiter will be hovering around your table continuously. Sir, are you okay? Can I put the napkin here? Is the cutlery clean? Oh, do you want to sit near the window? He will be running around, going around you all the time saying, sir, can I do this for you? He's caring so much for you. Surely he's in love with you. That's the way you define love, is caring for you. You say, no, that's not love. See? Every time you try and capture something which is essentially difficult to capture, you will struggle with the language, the vocabulary, the manner in which you approach the subject. So now let me give you the spiritual ideas of what is this love thing that everybody talks about, and yet when you try and get a handle on it, it seems to kind of be very, very tricky. You see, in fact, a lot of endearing features that all living things have, not only human beings, all living things have, in a way reflect the underpinning they have, which is not material, and yet something dramatic, but it's endearing, something good and thing that's kind of popping out of all living things, not only human beings, all living things. And this thing that's popping out, endearing, nice thing, they're coming out of every living thing, is this thing we can call compassion, love for others, and so on. So what is this thing? Underpinning to everybody is not matter like Richard Dawkins is suggesting. It is essentially something non-material trying to manifest itself, make itself visible using this material frame and our material condition. And that thing that is trying to pop out, spring out, comes out in different methods, different ways. And one of the ways in which it shows itself is the idea of compassion, love for the human beings, love for the living things. It is a natural thing. Suppose you see a little, kind of a snail going along the road, and a cyclist just crushes it. What happened? The link you have at the deeper level with other living things has become revealed in this particular way that you feel at one with other living things, not human, other living things. And that in a way expresses itself as this natural compassion or love we have for others, not necessarily physical love, these hormones playing up or looking after others, but something that's showing itself through every living thing. So it is, if you like, one of the essential litmus tests that we are not material beings, but something deeper within us, which is showing itself as real, love, if you can, attraction toward other human beings, compassion of being toward the living thing. That shows itself as love. So this is the more deeper vision of what is love at the spiritual level. But at different levels, we can, in a way, polarize it to the way that we like to view it.
So there we go. A fantastic topic to get us started off. Obviously fairly topical given the dates coming around for February 14th. So, what is true love? That's the topic we're going to explore today. Now, true love is actually a complex and multifaceted concept that has been discussed and debated by scholars, theologians, and spiritual leaders throughout history. It's often defined as selfless, unconditional form of love that transcends personal desires and attachments. In Hinduism, true love is often associated with bhakti, the path of devotion to a deity or a divine being, and is seen as a way to achieve union with the divine. But there are many kinds of ways you can like you peel an onion, there are many layers to love, and it depends on the context of what you're looking at. So, for example, you've got romantic love, which is a strong emotional and or physical attraction to another person, often leading to a romantic relationship. You've got platonic love, where you've got two people who are like friends, very good bond between them, not necessarily romantic. You've got family love, the love of siblings, father to child, mother to child, grandparents, etc., uncles, aunts. You have self-love, which is basically love and appreciation that you have for yourself, including self-care and self-acceptance. You have divine love, which is the love and devotion that you have for a deity or a divine being, often experienced through spiritual practices such as prayer or meditation. You have universal love, which is basically feeling of love and compassion for everything, regardless of individual characteristics or circumstances. And that is not the full list you can experience in any variety of combination. So today I'd like you all to help us by sharing what you think is the meaning of true love and what are your experiences, your thoughts, your comments on this. And let's get started into today's discussion. I'm going to bring around the panel we've got here. Welcome to the show, Vijay Bhai, Manish Bhai, and Sita Ben. So I'm going to start off by asking a series of questions. Maybe we can just do rapid fire style. But quick question, Sita Ben, is true love limited to just romantic relationships, or can it extend to all forms of relationships, including family, friends, and even strangers?
Yes, I mean, that's actually what Hindu philosophy is all about. If you look at the principle-based philosophy of Hinduism, which says that everyone and everything is divine, then, it's the most natural thing to love everyone and everything around you, because everything is bubbling up with the same spirit. What's inside you is inside me. And that's the true basis, not just for ethics and morality, for doing something good for your neighbor or your friend or your family, but for showing genuine love. Because, if we are operating in a purely materialistic framework, we think everyone is just lumps of matter and everything is just lumps of matter, then what the heck is the point of anything? What is the point of having a loving relationship with somebody if it's all just lumps of matter at the end of the day? What is the point? So literally, what the whole point of love is that spirituality is bubbling up, and this is how it gets expressed, through this expression of divinity, through this expression of love, which we find it naturally happens as human beings. We have a natural tendency to want to love those around us. And true spiritual living is by saying, I don't limit my love. I don't limit my love to just my immediate family or my, small group of friends. It's not limited to that. Spiritual living is all about multiplying yourself. The more people that you love, the more people that you interact with, the more divine, the more loving your nature becomes, the broader you become. And that's essentially what spiritual living is all about. So this materialistic philosophy sounds pretty depressing in comparison to this spiritual framework where we actually love everyone and everything around us. Vijay Bhai?
No, absolutely, Sita, I agree. I think the love is, if it's fleeting and it's materialistic, it doesn't last long because you have it and then it goes. It's got no deeper meaning as such. So, of course, ultimately, the love that is good, deep meaning, which stays with you, is, of course, love at a spiritual level. And I mean, that is something that has been discussed in so many of our Indic scriptures. You see, I mean, Bhakti Marg is very popular in that sense as well. So what is the endearing thing that which gives you true meaning in life? I mean, it's quite often, we show tokens of love. It's more like, rather than sometimes you wonder, are you giving tokens because to show that you love them, or are you feeling that, oh, I need some love myself? Because in a way, when you give something, it's just fleeting, right? But you feel that, it makes me feel good. It's more like yearning for love in that sense. But love should come naturally, as Sita says, and that should be at a spiritual level.
Yeah. Fantastic. Manish Bhai, quick question for you. So let's just recap this. From here, I got a few points here. And before I move to that question, it just reminds me, what you just mentioned, Sita Ben. I met a friend of mine yesterday. When I went to his house, he was telling me a story of how his neighbor, one morning, he found the neighbor trying to change the tire in his car because it had run flat. And he had his kids to go to school, and he was running late to drop them to school. So this friend of mine said, look, you're going to struggle with getting this car up in good time. Why don't you jump in the car with me? Your kids' school is just 5-minute, 10-minute drive from here. I'll drop the kids off and then I'll bring you back. And so he went and did it, didn't think anything of it. But his neighbor said, look, who does that in this time? So, he was very grateful. And that is the kind of, experiences that we're talking about. Manish Bhai, wrap up for us. What is the Hindu concept of true love and how does it differ from the Western concept?
I wasn't aware there was a different concept of love in Hinduism and Western, philosophy.
For example, in the West,
is a big question in itself. But in Krishna's story, we see Yasoda Maiya's love for Krishna, and then there is a Radha Krishna, and you see all this wonderful relationship, and it's about connecting with everyone around you and feeling oneness. Because when you reach the height of love, as they say, there is no two. It's you identify with the loved one, and I don't think that is in the Western philosophy. But then I'm no student of Western philosophy, so I can't.
What I meant was, like, in the Western countries, you would have, for example, Valentine's week or weekend or day, etc. And there's a lot of commercial marketing around it now. You got gifts, dinners, trips, various different things being marketed to you, pitched to you as this is the solution for your Valentine's Day. That consumerism concept is coming into India as well. That's not denying that. But what I'm saying is this was not the concept in India. We never had something like that in India. So that was what I was trying to highlight, that, you know, in Hinduism, we have a more deeper spiritual side of things. And in the Western side of it, it is one day to express the feeling, but I'm saying in general, this is the way it is here. Which
I
is
think, Nisit, why this commercialization is everywhere, and that's part of modern life. The good thing about is if you want to buy something, some gift for somebody, or do something to make someone appreciated, that is there for you. So there's good things about it, but yes.
Yes, but yes. So there is always two sides to every story. And so we're just looking at it as what are the differences between the two. Vijay Bhai, how does Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, relate to true love?
Oh, that's a very vast question. But actually, that bhakti is to do with true love. And the true love is, you know, again, for love for something that you genuinely show love. I mean, it reminds me of this very famous bhajan, you know, it says, Sabse Unchi Prema Sagai. If you ever heard that bhajan, it's fantastic. You know, like it says that Prema ke, I think Arjun ke Rath Hakyo means Krishna rode the chariot of Arjun. Why? You know, being a chariot is a very lowly status in those days. Yet the Supreme Lord of the universe became a chariot of Krishna. Why? That is true love, you know, like that. Or like, you know, Chute Phal Shabri ke Khai, like Ram was sitting there. And, you know, she was so immersed in love of Ram that instead of feeding her, when she's tasting all the, you know, all the wild berries, and by mistake she was giving the bitter ones and throwing the good ones because she was so lost in love for Ram. And Ram ate them happily without any complaint at all. Why? Because that is true love. True love is not just giving material stuff. Quite often, you know, we say, oh, I have to buy something, I have to buy. You don't have to buy something. You can show it in this kind of way, you know. So this is the thing. So true love is in Bhakti Marg, it's everywhere, and there's so many examples. That is what makes, you know, this idea of Bhakti Marg very endearing. Another very example, this song, if you, I think Manish Bhai, you might know, Sita might know, is that, you know, it says that, you know, when Krishna went to meet Duryodhan because he called him for dinner, he said, I have laid out all these wonderful, fantastic sweets for, you know, barfis, I don't know, whatever. But he went to eat a simple millet bread and, you know, what do you call it, curry made of, you know, bhaji, basically, you know, this green bhaji. Why did he do that? But that is true love, right? Because he knew what true love is. He didn't want the sweets. He wants Vidu. So the love is for, you know, Vidhu. It's sorry to mention this, Sita, but Dilip was telling me was really interesting stuff. He was saying that, you know, when he was living in his old house in Kensington, or 80, 90 people used to come every day to meet him. They would come and meet him every day. And I think one lady was serving tea all the time continuously. But when he went to live in a flat, they all disappeared. So it shows they didn't love him, they loved the palace, right? They didn't actually love him. The ones who should enduring love, they came, you see, the very few, obviously. But this is the point. I mean, true love is something that has got meaning for everybody. So if I just pray to God and the true love, then God will come to me. He will actually listen to me in that sense, right? And then this is fantastic. I mean, this idea of praying, like Radha Krishna, the Gopi Bhav is so fantastic. You know, it's endearing love, as Manish Nishima mentioned, at a platonic level, nothing to do with physical, you know, but physical actually truly it is fleeting. That level is absolutely stunning. So Bhakti Marg is, you know, Nishima is way up there in terms of true love. Absolutely fantastic. You see, I mean, examples are just everywhere. Narsi Mehta, if you go to South India, Tyagaraja, Purandar Das, there's so many great bards of India. Or Mirabai. Mirabai was such a, bhakti marg and so much intense love for God that if she just clicked her finger, Krishna would come to her. Even despite being the supreme lord of the universe, he would come to her. Why? That is true love. True love is that you can actually, even somebody as powerful that would come down to you. That is true love. It goes on and on forever. So Bhakti Marg is a true love. It's endless. There's just too many examples of that, Nishit, but fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Superb. It's certainly an avenue people can explore.
Yeah.
And Sitabai, next question for you. So what role does selflessness play in true love according to Hindu teachings? So is it that true love is always selfless, or can it also include personal desires and attachments?
So I mean, coming back to this whole materialistic philosophy versus spiritual philosophy. So the reason why, you do something for somebody else in a purely materialistic sort of framework is, it's a tit for tat mentality. I do this for you so that hopefully in the future you can repay the favor for me. And, it's like monkeys picking ticks out of each other's fur, hopefully the favor will be repaid later on. But obviously that's a very depressing way to live our life. Spirituality brings color, it brings love, it brings beauty to life. So when you think of things from a spiritual angle, we actually say the reason why I'm doing something for you is because the same thing that's inside me is inside you. And when you sort of operate from a place of love as opposed to operating from a place of commerce, your attitude, everything, the sort of vibrations you give off are very, very different. So because when you're operating from, a purely commercial standpoint, the reason why I'm doing something for you is so that you do something for me, it's not done with that same heartfelt love. It doesn't have the same impact somehow. When you do something with love, it's somehow like the impact is far greater. And I was actually talking to the boys at Eton a few weeks ago about the idea that, everyone always sort of raves about their mother's cooking. Whoever they are, they always say, my mother's cooking is the best cooking. And we're saying, why is the reason for that? And it's because your mum has done it with such tremendous love, such tremendous selflessness, and it has a tremendous impact on you. It could be the simplest meal, like nothing complicated, nothing fancy, but it has an impact on you because it's done with such tremendous love. So when you operate from a place of love, the impact is far greater. So I think that's a really important thing to remember, to work from a place of selflessness and love, and the impact will be greater. Even if you're doing the humblest things like making a meal for your child, it has a tremendous impact, as opposed to feeding 1,000 people, but you're doing it from a purely sort of commercial perspective.
So in other words, true love is more likely to be achieved when attached to a spiritual component rather than a material pursuit.
Yes.
Super. Vijay, I have a very interesting question for you. How does the Hindu concept of dharma, one's duty or purpose in life, relate to true love?
I think the thing is, if you do your duty properly, it actually benefits not just you, but society at large, without any kind of personal gain in that sense. Of course, you gain directly with society benefits. So true love is, dharma is actually doing your duty in a sense that it actually helps society stabilize, helps society progress forward. So you kind of contribute that idea in a selfless manner. If you do that, true love automatically bubbles up, right? Because you only follow your dharma selflessly if you have true love for humanity. As Sita mentioned earlier, love for humanity is unconditional and it's a spiritual level. If you do that in mind, then I think the dharma will actually just show true love to everybody. So that's the key idea, I think, of regarding dharma.
Super. Manish Bhai, here's one that I know you will enjoy. How does the Hindu practice of meditation and self-reflection contribute towards experiencing true love?
Interesting question. So the idea is, by doing meditation, is to remove this ego and feel oneness with the whole universe. And when you meditate and remove that ego, basically you identify with everything, and that's where the true love, when this I is removed, everything else becomes divine. And that's where you love everything, because you see yourself reflected in everyone else.
I suppose if you do it well enough, like Jibai, you might get an experience of the spark of the divine, which is another experience of true love in its own. So yes, fantastic. So Sitaben, here's a question from a viewer. How does the Hindu concept of Maya or illusion impact our understanding of true love? Because it comes through various filters, with the way we've been brought up, the way we perceive other things. But is it true love really? So how does this all tie up?
Yes, so this idea of Maya is literally a disjoint between what is real and what appearance is. It's like showing that there is a disjoint basically between this world of appearance and what actually is real. And the thing with the world of Maya is that it's very easy to sort of become attached to the things of the world, and even to all your immediate family and friends and all of that. The important thing to remember is that there is something permanent behind this world of impermanence. And the whole point of our spiritual journey is to touch base with that permanent basis and remember that everything else around us is impermanent. Everything is sort of subject to change, including the people that we love. We get so incredibly, I know from my own experience, we get so incredibly attached to the people that we love, our family and our friends. But what Hindu philosophy continues to remind us is that, this body may go, but that soul, that spirit is always there. That's the only permanent thing that there is. So in a way, having this sort of spiritual anchor in your life grounds you, because everything else is impermanent. All the things that you love, all the people, the possessions, everything you have is this world of appearance. It's impermanent. The thing we have to focus on is the permanent thing, which is the spirit, the soul, which is eternal and timeless. And if we can sort of focus our energies on loving that spirit rather than all the sort of superficial things, then hopefully we can stand a better chance of living through life without going through such tremendous ups and downs. And having this sort of spiritual anchor, it doesn't just sort of ground you in your life and going through all the challenges of life, but hopefully, you're just that one step closer to getting your get out of jail free card, because eventually all of us need to escape from this permanent cycle of birth and death and rebirth. How many times are we going to go through this? But if we kind of keep focusing our attention on the true permanency of life rather than the impermanency, hopefully we can get one step closer to getting out of this permanent cycle of birth and death.
Amazing. So Vijay, I have something that I want to ask you. So love is actually can be quite a strong feeling, and it can be very intense depending on what you're thinking about. And we hear stories, for example, of an ordinary mother who suddenly finds the strength to lift up a car because her baby is trapped underneath to save the baby. And we hear stories of other people committing horrible acts like murder in the name of somebody they love, And so it can be quite intense. Yet at the same time, if you think about it, we are a human body. The concept of love is right up here, and right up here is controlled by chemicals. So love can be manipulated, can be deceptive. It cannot be quantified, right? So my question is, can true love change over time, or is it constant and unchanging?
Well, it depends. I think what we mean by true love, because as Sita has explained the idea of Maya. I mean, interesting we mentioned this, Nishit Bhai, because just yesterday I was reading the works of this famous Japanese, swordsman. It's called Musashi Miyamoto, and he's written a book called Dokudo for 21 Principles. It is explaining that actually quite often we are highly guided and controlled by our lust or love for something, right? And he goes, don't be guided by such things. Or desires quite often drive us to do different things. And desires have these chemicals running us. Again, all this is part of, ironically, part of Maya. Jealousy, all these things. And he goes, never be guided by these things. So true love will only come when you stop being guided by all these kind of ideas. Because ultimately, chemicals are driven by our emotions and how we feel, jealousy, greed. These are all things. And that kind of love is actually fleeting. It doesn't give us ultimate true meaning. Ultimate true meaning only comes with, Sita mentioned, what gives us permanence. And you always have that. So I think, I mean, as you know, there's been countless movies from day one on the idea of love and all kinds of, as you mentioned, the examples you mentioned, hate, anger, you hate somebody because he loves somebody, you don't love the same person, all this kind of big hodgepodge of stuff you see all the time, right? And I mean, love has been explored endlessly in movies, all these, every novels you see, I don't know, is it Mills and Boons and God knows, all this kind of, they're exploring all this stuff. Ultimately, that's actually all temporal, right? So other thing you have to be careful is you can't be guided by partial feeling. We do that a lot. We get partial feeling, that person likes me. Yet you haven't gone through the gauntlet and you will never know. And we all experience that, right? So ultimately, even when you're married to each other, we may think that love, ultimately, the way marriage lasts, you have deeper meaning to our bond. It's a deeper meaning, and most likely the deeper meaning is spiritual, really. It'll never be material. Think about it. If you're in a marriage, if you're material, and so I'll buy a rose for you, because you say, Valentine's Day, on my birthday, you buy a gift. That gift, sorry to say, it doesn't really mean much. Okay, we give it. I think for kids, they enjoy it. I mean, adult stuff, there's a deeper thing, right? Deeper meaning is that, how do I make the other person, have some permanence in a life or in a journey to find herself? If I support that journey to find herself and vice versa, that is deeper meaning. That is true love. How do you help your partner? How do you help somebody else to progress spiritually from where they are? And that gives kind of deeper meaning. So you're right. It's a very broad topic and it's a very subjective term, right? Love. What do you mean by love? But ultimately, all these ideas of love we talk about in general, love for food, all of them are, notice they're all fleeting. How do you find that permanence? And that's the key we should try and strive for.
Amazing. Manish Bhai, so is true love something that you, is true love a feeling or a choice? Some people argue that true love is a feeling that arises naturally, cannot be controlled, whilst others believe that love is a choice and one must actively make it. What do you think?
Interesting question, Nisid Bhai.
I'll explain why in the context. So
I think as a choice, if it's a choice, the true love has to come from within and it has to be natural and it has to be there as a permanent thing. Otherwise, if you're making a choice, it's like you're involving your brain in a thinking process in there. So how can that be true love?
I'll explain what context I'm talking about. For example, we have in Hinduism, in the Hindu culture, we have arranged marriages. The concept of love at first sight, and that is more Western than Hindu, although everything's changing now. And there are pros and cons for both. But when it comes to arranged marriage, they probably don't know the person at the other end, and they have to cultivate the love. Whereas in the Western world, it is love at first sight first, and then carry on with the rest of knowing the person. So in the context of that, is it something you think one way or the other, or can any way work?
Nisid Bhai, it is in my thinking, arranged marriage or love marriage, I think it's something else, more like hormones at play than true love is at play. So that is my thinking. That can be a true love, between two partners, but more likely it's more hormones at play, as Jai Bhai was saying. And I think most people will realize this when they have children and they feel the love for the children. And then if they compare the love for the children with their love for their partner, you will see the difference. So is there a true love in love to the partner? Probably not. That is my take on it, but there can be. I'm not saying it can't be.
Fabulous. Fantastic. So it's an interesting topic to explore because if you're going to build a relationship within the family, you have to make a choice to cultivate that relationship. And it is an interesting fact. And I say this is a fact because although you say that, you would expect a love marriage to last longer, they're actually the ones with a higher rate of divorces than the arranged marriages. So because people have got a time to adjust to each other, I say it's a very interesting topic to explore. So why don't I do this? I've got to go back and engage with some of the viewers. I'll leave this discussion so you can carry on with it, and I'll put some questions from the viewers onto the chat panel for you.
Sure. Thank you, Rashid Bhai. A wonderful topic. We can continue with that. So in terms of, fairy tales, we see Cinderella stories, or in Islamic world, we see Layla Majnun stories, and some fantastic love stories are there. Do they capture true love, Sitaben? Do you think they capture the essence of love?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the thing, like there are so many classic fairy tale stories, like for example, you get with Love at First Sight, and you get all these Disney films which talk about love at first sight, but I think it's really important that that view is changing. So if you look at the sort of how Disney films have changed over the decades, it's really good, and it's done in a really positive way, because the older films, it's all love at first sight. But then in the more recent films, they say, actually, hang on, how can you marry a man you've just met, like in Frozen? So I think it's really changing that attitude that, love doesn't really work like that. You have to sort of get used to each other. You need to get used to each other's likes and dislikes. Suppose you don't like the way he, I don't know, eats his breakfast or this or that. You have to sort of get used to each other. You have to get to know each other, and then you can see if you are compatible or not. It's one of those things. It's a very sort of intangible thing to you can't really put your finger on it. And I've seen some of these programs, Married at First Sight, for example, where they try and do very scientific analytical data to see if these two people who look perfect for each other on paper, how do they get on in real life? And in the vast majority of cases, it doesn't really work that way. So I think it's one of those things you can't quantify, you can't sort of scientifically say this produces this effect. It's one of those things that you have to sort of do a trial and error sort of situation with and see if it works or not. But like I said, the idea of loving everybody because they are the spirit and not because of what they look like is essentially the most important thing. So we need to bear that in mind at all times, really. Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Manish Bhai, because I always thought, what do you mean by love at first sight? Because you don't, is it hormones driving you? What is driving? Because it more like seems like hormones are driving you. One thing to mention, the idea that, I'll be honest with you, it's the idea that we have that, you only fall in love with one person, that has been a norm. But you'd be surprised, the societies out there, even in Scandinavia, they don't believe in love as first sight. A lot of people have, funny enough, multiple partners these days. There's all kinds of combinations. So what do you mean by love? This is the question, right? I think love could actually be the idea that something has to be deeper, something permanent for somebody. All the love we have at material level, it is actually ultimately, we get married. We all married for nearly 30 years, right? But the question is, these are social norms that we follow and we cultivate and whatever, which is a good thing, because you won't have a spiritual partner who supports you to grow in every possible way, to grow, become a better person. That's the whole idea of this partner. But I think that's what more like real love is. How do you make your partner grow, spiritually, and support them in growth? Fleeting love will come and go. So you have to be very careful what you mean by the idea of love at first sight. As I said, love is so subjective. I don't think anybody will understand what ultimate love means. The only thing you can say about love is it has to be endearing. It has to be come naturally. It has to be whole of humanity. That's what I can add to that, Manish. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear, Sitaben Vijay Bhai. Next question. How do one cultivate love? Or if you are in a relationship, how do you make that journey that makes this relationship more fruitful, more spiritual, Vijay Bhai?
Okay, so there's a couple of things you can do. One thing is, of course, you should do activities together which are beneficial for society at large. That really actually helps a lot and it makes you feel better, if you do the activities together. And plus do activities in such a way that we both kind of, grow spiritually. Simple thing like nature walks, when you go nature walks with your partner, that kind of gives you a feeling of connection with the wider world. So there's a lot of things you can do to grow. I think the misconception is if the idea of materialism, if I buy somebody a nice car or a nice, I don't know, dress or something, that is will last for a day, and then you get bored of it. This is a classic materialism. We all know that, right? If you get something, after a while, within a few days, you get bored of it. It becomes a norm. It's only novel. It's only shows you love it because it's novelty. Once novelty becomes a norm, and that will just go. So I think ultimately you have to do activities and do things which at a deeper level kind of bonds you. And one way of doing that is, as I think Siddha mentioned, interaction with humanity at a at a spiritual level, with the nature, do good things. So there's a lot of activities you can do, and that actually will help you bond and make you understand each other. And again, of course, live for your partner as well, support them. These are the key kind of ideas. But there's nothing you can pin down for sure in that. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the whole point of living with a partner is so that you can become a building block for society. You can provide some stability. You can have a family, have your own children who will then, grow up and have their own families as well. So you're kind of like the glue for society. And the only way that the glue can stick together is because you have to try and put each other's needs first. You have to try and live for each other, because if everyone starts deciding, oh, it's all about me, what do I want? What do I want? How are the two of you ever going to work together? How are you ever going to solve problems? How are you going to get through the hardships of life? If you have each other and you live for each other, as Dad has said so many times in his videos, that's the only way that love can really work, because love is about putting the needs of somebody else before you, and not in a purely commercial way, in a truly genuinely spiritual way, because it's the same thing percolating through you and me. And the only way that you can express that is by saying, I put your needs first. I see the God in you. I don't just see you as a physical being. I see you as a spiritual being. And in that way, you give each other tremendous reverence and respect and put their needs first.
That's very well put, Sitaben, Vijay. Love Vivacity is saying, Sitaben, if Brahman is true love or unconditional love, then is there anything outside or opposite of unconditional love? If so, what could be classed as opposite of love? Maybe fear? What's your take on this question?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at everything and everyone around us as divine and spiritual, then this love will sort of come naturally. But I think the difficulty comes is when we see this world of appearance and we think this world of appearance is real. And when you think that is real rather than the spiritual underpinning, then all of these other clouds come in the way, these clouds of fear and anger and jealousy and pride, and all of these things kind of block our true vision of spirituality, which is lying underneath. And as I said before, the whole point of our spiritual journey is to sort of uncover that veil, which is covering and clouding our minds and our visions. And every spiritual endeavor that we do, whether it be loving a personality of a God or doing good work or meditating, all of these spiritual endeavors, all of them are basically exercises for rubbing away the dross, the fluff, which is covering up the true vision of what is actually there. And, if we get so caught up with the fluff, then all of these other, sort of tendencies come out in us, which are not natural, and it's not who we actually are. The whole point is that we are divine, we are spiritual, we are perfect and pristine beings at the end of the day, even though it doesn't look like it. And when we remember that, then everything falls into place. Everything means that we operate from a place of love rather than from a place of commerce, and everything makes so much more sense. Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. We have that. I think when we have to be careful when we say that love is Brahman is ultimate unconditional love. The state of Brahman actually exists. There's no opposites. Opposites and dual polars are actually more when you live in the material world, or there's fear or whatever. I think that's the best what we can come up with to describe the ultimate experience of Brahman. Unless you experience, you really can't say it. But as Jay has mentioned quite often times, we try to use the best words we can for an experience which is beyond our human understanding. So we try and use the best words we have, and love comes with one word. So I think when you say that the idea is opposite fear, I think there's no word like that, because you're not living in a kind of in a timeline as such, right? So you experience this kind of stuff. So I mean, it's true love. But I mean, the way you get there is just to explain how to get there. So yeah, so I think we have to be careful when you say that unconditional love is love for uh, it is love is beyond comparison. You can't have an opposite in that sense. Yeah.
That's very well put, Sitaben Vijay. We got very interesting question come up from Jaimin Mashurya. So this Brahman is love is kind of coming from love is God, kind of that
Yeah.
somewhere there as well. And the thing is, then that should be permanent. And Jaimin Mashurya is saying, with the risk of sounding very unromantic, especially so close to Valentine's Day, falling in love, getting married, having children, etc., ultimately holds you back from spiritual progress and moksha.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on that, Vijay?
Okay, I mean, it's a very good question. I mean, this is what we've been discussing for so many lectures we have had. Also in the class, Hinduism, this comes up. Look, for the vast majority of people, usually when they go through different ashrams of living, like from the Brahmacharya ashram to Grihastha ashram to Vanprastha, most of them at a young age are not ready for spiritual progress. And at that time, they have this idea of, pleasures of karma building in the body. It's natural, a lot of people have them. There are very few who will jump eventually to ultimately spiritual progress. So Hinduism understands and accepts that idea. So there's nothing unromantic about that. That's how human condition is, human build. So Hindus do accept that. That's why there are these 4 Purushas, right, which you follow. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And if you look very carefully, the idea of Dharma, Artha, Kama, in the Grihastha ashram, they actually apply a lot. So you're saying, look, if you have these desires, of having a partner, children, if they bubble up and you kind of bottle them up, and you're not at that spiritual level yet, or ready for that highly spiritual progress, then you're going to become a madman, right? You will go crazy. So we accept that happens. But it's true that a temporary it may hold you back because you're too stuck in your married life, your children. But ultimately, at some point, you will let go because you will have gone through that stage of karma and artha and earning money, and then you go to spiritual progress. So it may hold you back, but I think there's something that you will eventually get to the end. So don't worry if you're temporarily held back. If you're genuinely spiritual and you want to progress, it will come. So you temporarily hold back because you're not ready for it. I think we have to keep that in mind. But one thing else is also we must keep in mind, especially in the Grihastha ashram, is that you can't just say to your partner or your children, bye-bye, I'm going now, see you, I'm going to go on a spiritual journey. It doesn't work like that. So it's a very slow progress in some cases. Of course, there are some unique individuals born, and some great seers, like Vivekananda. These people are very highly spiritual from a very young age, and they don't go through the stage of falling in love and having children. But there are very few of those. But there's also another angle to that as well. There are quite a few examples of people who are married, but they don't have children. They live a celibate life, and they both go on a spiritual journey together in moksha. So we have all these examples together. But of course, if you have children, you are responsible. You have to give them the best. So you can't run away from that. That's part of your dharma too. So it's a bit of a tussle. But I think ultimately, if you're genuinely spiritual and you want to go for moksha, it is going to be, but only a small temporary kind of setback for you. Eventually, you'll progress forward.
Very well put, Sita. Vijay Bhai, I think Sita Ben's had to leave the. So we got next question from Cherry Jubilee. She's saying, in the West, we assume true love is romantic and two people who love forever. I don't think that's true. So there is this timeline thing that true love is permanent. Would you agree with Cherry Jubilee's statement and this thing about permanent love? What's your take on it, Vijay?
I think, I don't think that's true. I mean, even let's look even scientifically. If you look at evolution doesn't say there's anything like true love. But look, when we get married, of course, there's a lot of, as we mentioned earlier, there's love at first sight, all these hormones flying about. When you have children, or suddenly you settle down, then you just make do, kind of. In most marriages, people just make do and get along and troll along. But I think the thing is, the idea of the nature of love changes as you in a partnership. The nature of love changes. It's not just hormones. Eventually, you progress together spiritually. If it's spiritual, ultimately it's true love. But the idea that we have to, I think, is sometimes with the way religions or some culture or traditions put it. or you have to be the partner and you have to show true love forever. And it doesn't work like that, because your life is very complicated. We have too many challenging pulls and pushes from everywhere. And sometimes, even if you're married for a long time, you kind of get bored. As we quite often, you're eyeing the neighbor's husband or neighbor's wife, and it's natural. People do that. It's not a unique. It's a human thing. It's human. Hormones flying about. The key question is, how do you transcend that? And this is where the idea of the Indic dharmic faiths come in. You have to transcend that idea. So true love forever, I don't know if it's there. Maybe there are very few, 1 in a million cases which happens, but it doesn't work like that. Ultimately, you that kind of, you have to change your life, and you start looking at what gives you deeper meaning. What is ultimate true love? It doesn't have to be physical. It has to be something more than physical. And that's the ultimate aim. That's what you have to go for. True love at a material level, I don't think it exists.
Okay, we got another question from Kunal. He's asking, is it love at first sight or attraction at first sight?
I think it's more like attraction at first sight, because love is a much more broader, much more powerful word. I think the attraction at first sight. And this is the key thing, because if you just get attracted by somebody at first sight, does it last? Most probably not, right? And I mean, of course, the question is, what attracts people? Quite often, attraction seems to be physical features attract people. But there are some, of course, who are attracted by the qualities. So it depends what you mean. I think one is attraction. I believe the word is snare, and love is more like frame. Different words, but I guess it's more like attraction, I think. But I'm not an expert, and the topic is highly subjective, so people have different views on that.
Wonderful. We got about 7 minutes to go, so we'll try to cover as many questions as possible. Christine Perello said, last time I thought I was in love, I went through physical changes. They say when you love truly, it affects you physically as well. Is that true? Vijay, what's your take?
Well, it is true, because when you say physical changes, it's true, because it's not me saying it. This is how we've evolved. If you believe in evolution, it's true that when you have attraction, it's the idea of procreation, as Charles Darwin would say. The urge for not only humans, actually, it happens in all living things. Where, of course, in the case of other animal species, the idea of smell, hormones are far more powerful than ours. They can't even control. If you look at animals, they have no control over their bodies once they have these hormones control them. Humans are a little bit more comfortable. Nevertheless, we are not different. We are affected by the hormones. And there are physical changes, of course, happens. Yeah, it happens to all of us. It's quite natural. But again, that is all fleeting. It has temporal. It maybe last for months, maybe for years. Ultimately, it will not be. Ultimately, you have to transcend that. So yes, it does happen. It's scientific fact. Yeah. So
we take a question from Ram Swarup Godara. He's saying, why Advaita Vedanta contradict Vedas? Vedas support three things: Prakriti, Iswar, Jivatma, but Advaita Vedanta don't support it. What's your take on this, Vijay?
No, actually, it's a good question. I mean, there are many different views, but I would say that I've talked to a lot of scholars, even the scholars who are Advaita scholars. The Upanishads generally talk about, Upanishads talk about the idea of only Brahman and Atman. They don't go into the other part. But the early parts, yes, there is that. I think it depends. My personal view is that ultimately, if you go way deep, it is not much different. Because I'll give you an example. If you worship the idea of, what do you call them? Ishwar or Jiva. If you look at Ishwar, Jivatma is everybody believes Jivatma. Jivatma is just Atma with qualities, which as you go through births, the characteristics which cover the Atma are passed on. Atman is when you truly know yourself, when you're past moksha. So Jivatma is fine. But the idea of Ishwar, it is like this, that ultimately when you have connection to Ishwar, you become one with him in a sense. You always fixated on him. It's almost like the other idea of being one with Brahman. It's just a way, I think, is the way of kind of play with words. It is also true that in the Advaita tradition, there is no Prakriti, very true. And we know that if you look at Sankhya Darshan, Prakriti is eternal. I mean, there are many views. I know the tradition I come from in the Swami tradition, there's 5 eternal truths. Jeev, Ishwar, Maya, Brahm, Parabram, and one more, I can't remember now, yeah? So there's 5. So Maya is also eternal. If you look at Advaita tradition, there's only one eternal. There's Brahman. There is no Maya. There is no Prakriti, right? If you look at Sankhya Darshan, there's Prakriti and Purusha. If you look at Buddhism, even idea of Purusha is nothing. There's nothing. It's zero. Nothing is eternal. So we have all these Maya kind of beliefs. I think the Vedas are very vast, and depending on what you believe, you will pick different things. But if you look at Upanishads in general, they tend to point towards Advait. But the question is, how do you interpret Advait? That's the trick, yeah. So the Vishishtadvait tradition said that Advait actually means Ishwar as well is part of Advait, and then they work it like that. So there are many different angles. I think don't get stuck in the idea that it does this. It's a broad ideas, and all ideas have their own kind of merit. Yeah.
Hey, we take next question from Alan Donsaji. He's saying humans are violent, lustful beings, tribal gods, Viking god, Odin, were always the personification of these aspects. If it is a part of us, then it is also part of our consciousness. If we are trying to connect with consciousness, how can we deny that part of us? So is violence part of us? Vijay bhai, what's your take on this?
I'll be honest with you, there are some Indic traditions we believe that you have to go through the gauntlet of this violence, lust. Only when you come out the other side, then you think about questions. There are some beliefs. But look, our bodies, the Maya or the forces that control us, tend to do all these kind of things you mentioned, lust. But if you're truly disciplined and you truly work towards your goals of finding spirituality, then you'll conquer those forces. At a mundane level, yes, we have all this, and you see them in all kinds of stories of gods. Even in the Vedas, the battle between the Dasyus and all this, the idea of Asuras and Devas, they are there. So it's not denying that. But the question is this: there's something that's much deeper into us. How do we cultivate that, and how do we fight these ideas and come out on the side? And that's the trick to do. So I think we're not denying that, but it doesn't mean that they're part of us. You can actually wither them away and peel them out and throw them away. That's the trick. Not to accept that they always been part of us, regardless. When you trying to achieve a moksha, you don't say, I'll keep that and I'll keep that. No, you have to get rid of that. And eventually it will go. So in a way, it's true at a mundane level, but ultimately, if you're truly disciplined and you've really focused and you're really spiritual, then those kind of things, lust, violence, all these things which are part of mind, which kind of cover you up, will kind of peel off and go away.
I agree with you there, Vijay bhai. Very well put. We take the last question for the day. Nutan Singh is asking, what is Vastu Shastra? I want to know how structure of home affects the progress of family.
I love this topic. I read Vastu Shastra a while back. See, the Vastu Shastra, look, we spend half of our life, more than half of our life in a home, in a house, in some sort of building, just a general rule. So how we structure a building, how we set up a building is very important. I'll give you a simple example of Vastu. If you look at the houses in India, have you noticed one thing? I mean, if you go to the villages, when you go in the door in the front, there may be some 2 or 3 rooms in the front, and you got a big courtyard in the middle. And then you go to different rooms in the 4 directions, right? So what happens that you have to see people. You can't miss people because you go through the courtyard. If you look at a modern English house, you can just go upstairs, hide in your room. You never interact with the people downstairs. Your sitting room is here, your living room is here, and you can actually isolate yourself. In a Vastu house, you can't isolate yourself. Yet at some point, say you had an argument with your son or your mother or your wife, you can't avoid them. At some point, you're going to bang into them because you have to pass the courtyard, right? And the courtyard has the havan. You see, in olden days, there's a havan in the middle. So all the activities take place in the middle. It kind of helps human interaction. And the tulsi plant is in the middle. You water the tulsi plant. If you're in any room around the courtyard, you will see that activity. When the activity, we automatically don't do spirituality. So how do you create an environment in the house that's such that you're always looking at somebody, you're always interacting with somebody, you always have a picture of a deity somewhere from most possible angles. So you put your house, say Monday, in a place. If you got an open plan, for example, and put it somewhere, everybody can see it in any direction. You always linked to the deity itself. Also, the way the sun rises, when the sun comes up, it's in the morning sun which comes in such a way that it makes brightens your day up. So Vastu is very powerful. It's very sublime and very subtle. It's unconsciously trying to create an environment where it's conducive for spiritual progress and conducive to having good spiritual relationships. So if you look at it in that sense, the houses in England where I live, they are totally anti-Vastu. But houses in India, where a little courtyard in the middle with a tulsi plant, with a nice tree, with maybe a havan courtyard, and where you have to meet people and say namaste to everybody. That's Vastu. And Vastu goes in a lot of deepness. Don't use metals, in the house for meditation and so on and so forth. But that's the idea of Vastu in short. It's beautiful if you understand it. But of course, there are some things which I don't understand, so I can't really say. But general rule, you spend a lot of time in buildings. So buildings has to be spiritually friendly and human friendly. That's the idea. Manish, about that, yeah.
Over to you, Nisit bhai.
Fabulous. So, folks, thank you so much for joining us on today's broadcast. Today's live stream with the Hindu Academy team focused on the topic of true love. We explored various debates and various questions related to the definition of true love, including whether it is a feeling or a choice, if it requires sacrifice or selflessness, if physical attraction plays a role, and if it requires trust, and so on. So we hope that today's live stream gives you a deeper understanding of true love in the Hindu context, and that you found it to be thought-provoking and insightful. So at this time, our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of Turkey and Syria who have been affected by the recent earthquake. The loss of life and destruction of property is devastating, and we send our love and support, our prayers and our thoughts to all those that have been affected. So we would also like to take this opportunity to wish you a wonderful, blessed week ahead, reminding you to join us again next week on Saturday at 2 o'clock, same time, for another exciting live stream. In the meanwhile, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we post throughout the week on a regular basis, and that's where you can get the latest videos on our channel. And finally, we'd like to leave you with a spiritual quote that is relevant to today's focus topic. And the quote goes like this: "Love is the strongest force the world possesses, yet it is the humblest imaginable." And that's a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. May this quote inspire you to cultivate true love in all aspects of your life. From us to you, goodbye for now, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.